Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Adventure Seeker Sarah Show. I'm Sarah, and broadcasting today from Hammonds Plains, Nova Scotia. Yes, that's right, a brand new place that I'm broadcasting from. I'm pretty confident that you're never going to see me in the same place 2 weeks in a row, and that's kind of how I like it. So that's fantastic and exactly where it's supposed to be. So I am in Nova Scotia, but I'm not going to talk about Nova Scotia today. I do have a show planned in a couple of weeks for hidden gems in Nova Scotia, because there are so many. Like, we come here a few times a year, and every single time I come, I find at least one new thing to do. Nova Scotia is full of adventures, full of beautiful things, full of breweries, which I like too. Like, lots of cool things to do here. But we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Today, I have a great guest coming up, Nick Allan, who is Santa and an adventure enthusiast and has lots of great stories. But first, I want to talk about why it's important to have flexibility when you're traveling, because things don't always go as planned. In fact, things rarely go as planned. So if you tried to tune into my show last week, you'll have seen that. I first tried to have a guest on and was going to pre-record because I knew I was traveling at the exact time that my show was happening. And, reception from the Trans-Canada Highway isn't always reliable. So I had Sam Smedella, who is going to be on next week, try to do a pre-record with me. But they were out in the middle of the ocean on a cruise ship, and so the connection wasn't great. So they had this fantastic idea that I would send them questions, and they would record the answers for me, which was great, except I couldn't get them to upload while I was on the road. So Nick agreed to step in last minute last week, which was fantastic, except then we had some tech issues on the back end. But that whole day was all about, readjusting as we were in the middle of traveling. But that's certainly not the only time that has happened to me. So one story that pops to mind with, being able to just kind of go with the flow and be happy no matter what's going on, is when we went to Prehistoric World, which is this great little park in Morrisburg that has all of these dinosaur sculptures, a nice trail through the woods, little informational panels about every dinosaur. So it's a great place for anyone, but especially for toddlers. And I had a toddler this summer, and thought he'd really like to go see the dinosaurs. So we planned to go with a friend who also had little ones. And just before it was time to go, the day before, I got my surprise COVID call, come get your vaccine. I was on a wait list. So I was getting my second vaccine. And for anyone who's had theirs, sometimes it kind of knocks you out a little bit. That second vaccine makes you a little bit sick. So I woke up the next morning, the day that we were supposed to go to Prehistoric World, feeling like I'd been run over by several buses, and kind of went, well, if I can walk to the kitchen, then I can walk through Prehistoric World. Like, it doesn't matter if I feel like crap, I can still go do the things. So I managed to get myself up and go get a glass of water and figured, yeah, this is fine. We'll just go ahead with our plans, which seemed like a good idea until I got there. And about halfway through our walk through Prehistoric World, I think the people with me were rather concerned that I might actually just keel over and die. But that whole day was full of rerouting. So we ended up getting there on time, but our friends were late. But Adam had an appointment in town that he had to go to, so he had to leave. So he had to leave some of us behind and go to his appointment, which somehow resulted in a very, very sick Sarah walking down the highway for an hour and being stuck on the side of the road while we waited for Adam to get back. So, but through all that, Chris was with me as well, and Chris has traveled with me a lot. And we spent that time talking about how this wasn't the worst adventure we'd ever been on. Like, we found ways to make it fun. So I think, among other things, like I talked about this before, we kind of make our travel very flexible a lot of the time, leaving in some buffer room, because often the things that you see on a sign over there and go, ooh, that looks interesting, that ends up being some of our most fun moments during travel. So leaving that room to be flexible, but also not getting bent out of shape if things don't go your way, is one of my best trips for making travel pleasant. To be honest. So normally I'd prattle on a little bit longer, but I'm really excited for my next guest this week, and we have lots of things to talk about. So I'm going to bring in Nick. Now, Nick is an actor, which is how we met. I'm a photographer and I shot his headshots, but we also traveled together recently. So he has a unique perspective on traveling with Sarah and then also has some other interesting stories to tell. So let's welcome Nick.
Well,
Hello, Nick.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
So let's get this one out of the way first, because of course it's what everyone is probably wondering. You're Santa
I am Santa
sometimes.
Claus, indeed.
So tell
Yeah.
us how that came to be and what that's like for you.
How Santa Claus came to be? Oh boy, that was a long time ago when I didn't even have a beard, for that matter. My first experience as Santa Claus was being a mall Santa with a fake beard, and that just looked so terrible that I thought never again. So I decided to let it grow, and here we are. It certainly
That's some
limits.
commitment right there. I like it.
Yeah.
What I know that you during COVID being Santa hasn't been quite as much fun,
No.
but you have had lots of good times as Santa. Is there a story that sticks out for you while being Santa? And you've been Santa in movies, been small Santa several times.
Santa in movies. I guess one of the more amusing ones was there are a lot of Christmas movies that are shot in and around the Ottawa area, and the time of year doesn't stop the production companies. So of course I'm hired out as Santa Claus, wearing the full gear in the middle of summer, uh, in 30-degree heat, and the funny part was they had to bring a van onto the set that had air conditioning in it, and I had to sit in there for the longest time on set, getting many envious stares from people outside the van.
I bet. And someone's job on set that day was just to be driver of the Santa cooling van.
Yep.
So
I had my own driver and everything. You bet.
Amazing. So you've had some interesting times through the years. I swear every time I talk to you, there's a new story of something else you've done at some point in your life. But you had this really great story about photographing a skydiver and your experience doing that. So I would like you to tell that story to the masses, because
I've never gone skydiving before this incident or since. And I was working for a newspaper as a photographer at the time, and I was doing a feature on the skydiving school that was situated in our in our town. So I met up with the head instructor, and I spoke with him for a while, did the interview, and then I said, "Listen, let's go for pictures." So we decided we would go up in this very small, very old single engine aircraft. Had only one seat in it, and that's where the pilot sat. And we sort of sat on the floor, on the bare sheet metal floor in the back, behind the pilot. And so we get up in the air, and the instructor says what he'll do is he will go out onto the wing, and he'll hold on to one of the struts there, and I can just take my pictures. And I said, fine, that works well. And I leaned over to the pilot, and I asked him, when he gets out there, could you bank so that turn sharply so that I could get the ground in the picture as well? Which he says, no problem to. So we get up in the air, and the door is open. The parachutist climbs out onto the plane, climbs out on, and he's hanging on. And we go into the steep bank, and I start sliding towards this open door. And I panic a lot, and my legs have never been stretched so wide as they were. I had to stop myself at the door to prevent myself from. I had a parachute on, but I had no desire to go inadvertent parachuting. So,
I know that's a terrifying story for you, but it is a good one, and it's kind of amusing.
Oh, it's funny now.
Yeah.
It wasn't at the time.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. It's one of those things that's only funny afterwards, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very funny now.
Yeah. So as everyone knows, I'm also on a paranormal investigation team. What you might not know is that I also weaseled Nick into joining. So Nick, you're also now on the tech team for the paranormal investigation team I'm on for Class A. So you had some experience on a paranormal team before. and maybe didn't have the best experience. So tell us a little bit about that, and then what made you decide that maybe it would be okay to try that again now?
Well, what happened is I'm very much a skeptic. I honestly don't believe in ghosts. Uh, but at the same time, there's a little part of me that says, geez, wouldn't it be cool if they really did exist? So that's why I joined. But when I joined this first group, and this was many years ago, uh, I'm joining with the idea of being completely scientific about it, and I am looking for ways to disprove all of the stories or the myths of whatever particular location that is being investigated. And it turned out that this group that I had joined were comprised mostly of people who were looking for precisely the opposite. They they in their hearts believed that ghosts existed, and so they were looking for anything and just grabbing onto any shred of what could be considered to be evidence. Uh, and eventually, what happened is a photograph came up for, and this is back in the old days of film, and you actually had to send your film away and wait a few days. This was even before a 1 hour photo. But the pictures came back, and in one of the pictures there was what is called lens flare. And Sarah, as a photographer, you know what that is. That's when a ray of light strikes the lens at just such an angle that it produces a spot, usually a many-sided, six-sided spot. And so I pointed this out. I explained this is not a spectral being. This is a trick of the light and the lens, and I got kicked out. They decided that I was just far too skeptical, and that this piece of lens flare was a message from Casper, and they couldn't have any naysayers about. So this was quite a long time ago. We're talking about the 80s. And my interest remained, but I never got back into it with another group until the group that you started talking to me about. And it sounds to me like they're going about it the same way that I wanted to go about it. So we'll give it another shot and see what happens. I've joined, but I haven't really done anything with them yet.
I'm excited to see your first ghost outing. That should be
Yes, so am
an
I.
interesting experience. When I went on my first investigation, I'm also pretty skeptical, although I've had some experiences that I can't explain, but I really thought I'd be sitting around all night doing absolutely nothing and waiting
Well,
for something to happen. But it was an interesting night. So
there are plenty of situations where there are experiences that you can't explain, and that's what I'm hoping for, is to be able to explain them.
exactly.
And even if they can't be explained, it's still going to have to go a long way before I'm going to believe that we've been visited by.
You won't just be out there crying ghost.
No, no, absolutely not.
Good. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to do something a little bit strange. I'm going to show you a series of photos and ask you some questions about those photos, because we recently spent some time in Costa Rica together. Nick
Yeah.
was there with his brother, and they had a condo and knew that I was travel writing and agreed to let me come stay and do some writing and travel around. And I sort of just dragged Nick everywhere I went. Sometimes made him hold a camera and do some things that were a little bit outside of his comfort zone sometimes. But we're going to bring up some photos from that trip. Just a warning, if you ever plan to travel with me, you probably will end up doing some things outside your comfort zone. So,
well, I'd love to do it again. I can't wait for it. But I have to say, probably one of the last things that I would ever do would be on a show about seeking adventure, where normally I seek, recliners and couches and beds to take naps on and that sort of thing. But yeah, the time you were in Costa Rica was an absolutely fantastic time. Did lots of things I never would have done otherwise.
do all the things.
Do them all.
All right. So this was from the very first day, not the day I arrived because that was quite late, but our first day out adventuring, we went off to the closest national park.
Yeah.
Which ended up in a 3.5 hour hike in the jungle with not a single other person to be seen, and signs that we didn't understand. So being our first real adventure out, how were you feeling during that?
I was getting really tired of the expression, "Oh, it'll circle around." Trying to follow the paths, and every path, it was either yourself or me who was saying, "Oh, it'll just circle around back to where we were." And I think sometimes we were correct, but not always. But that was
Yeah,
great fun. Lots of little lizards and cutter ants.
those leaf cutter ants were really cool. I
They were
still haven't put up footage of those, and that's probably my favorite footage from Costa Rica, to be honest.
they were very industrious.
Yeah, you were a good leaf cutter ant spotter. That was, that
Yeah.
was good. That, I think the funniest thing about this was you might notice that even though we're in the tropics, neither of us is holding a bottle of water. But that's not because we weren't smart enough to bring water.
We did bring water,
Yeah.
but we weren't allowed to take it with us.
Nope. No.
No.
Costa
They
Rica's great and has all these
insisted
environmental protections, right?
Yeah, that they would not allow us to take our plastic bottles of water with us, which was
Yeah.
a good thing
Yeah,
for the
well,
park. Not maybe not so much for us, but
definitely a good thing for the park. Maybe less of a good thing for about at hour 3, when we were hiking up those stairs. But
yes,
but yes, and the funny thing is, it never really actually did circle back around, because when we got to the end of the main path, we went to the right, thinking that we'd come out on the left if we just kept going in a circle. And that never happened. We never ended up on that path at all. So I'm not
right.
sure where we ended up circling to, but it certainly wasn't to the other side of the path. But that was a good walk. Do you want to tell the story about when we thought it was raining and found out later what was actually happening?
Oh, well, we're out in the jungle, and of course, the jungle is wet and everything like that, and so we really enjoyed. It was hot, it was warm, and so it was nice to get a bit of a sprinkle on us and just a bit of a misting or whatever. So it was a little disconcerting to find out what it really was.
Which was just
Had a pee.
cicadas peeing. Yep, we
Yeah,
were so refreshing. No, we were
no,
just getting peed on. So that was fun. We found that out a few days later on another
yeah.
adventure.
Next
All
time
right.
we're taking an umbrella. Me and a friend.
Okay, so the monkeys. So this is a good example of, you should just always listen to Sarah. So
Yeah.
when we went to book this, do you remember what you said?
I was not a fan of monkeys at all.
I don't like monkeys.
I don't like monkeys.
All right. Well, you don't have to go if you don't want to, but and
Oh,
then
I went.
you did, and then what?
Oh, and then we ran into monkeys, and these guys were great. These were I can't remember the name of the place, but it was a sanctuary. But these were not tame. These are wild residents of the jungle, and they would show up at this particular spot when it was feeding time, and it was fabulous. You hold a piece of food in one hand, and you hold it out to one side, and you put your hand out on the other, and the monkey will cross the bridge that you've created to get to the food. And sometimes, like you'll see, he will stop and eat right behind your head.
Wasn't like the first thing that happened when we got there, one of them just came and grabbed your glasses and threw them on the ground?
Was that me that happened to?
Yeah, I certainly have pictures of you without your glasses.
Okay, well, I'll take your word for it.
Oh, yeah.
My memory's not that great, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
They kept trying to steal my phone, but I specifically brought the phone that has the thing that I can hold on to it with, even though the video is not as good on that one, because I knew that would happen. So I just constantly had monkeys trying to pry the phone out of my hand. But
those guys were great, and
they were adorable. That was a great experience. Yeah, that was through Neofauna, which, like you said, is a wildlife sanctuary. rehabilitation center, and they were amazing. So we'll talk about them again in a little bit. I bet you know what's coming there. Okay, so this is at Valcampoas. And I didn't even really ask you at the time, but the first thing that happened is we go in and they give us hard hats, as you can see, and then filter us into a room where they give this big speech on the wall. There's a video playing of, there are shelters in case of volcanic eruption. Here are where the gas masks are located. Keep your helmet on at all times. And we drove like 2.5 hours for this. So what was going through your mind as that was happening?
I was really hoping there wasn't going to be an eruption. I knew the odds were that there wouldn't be, but, with my luck. I'll tell you, the thing that really caught me about that was that most of the time I spent in Costa Rica, I was there for about 2 months, was on the coast, and temperatures at the coast were very, very hot. A day of 35 degrees would have been average. But when we went to the volcano, which was such a higher elevation, it was borderline cold up there.
It was 15 degrees when we were there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, which is actually a little too chilly for us, Sarah, but the view made it worth it. So
yeah, absolutely. And we got lucky with the cloud cover too.
Yes, this place often you will go in the middle of the day and you can see the clouds in the distance there in the background.
Yeah.
Often that'll all have moved in so that you can't even see the crater. So we did get very lucky. Of course, I didn't realize that was the case until we were about 2 hours into our 2.5 hour drive. I was like, oh, by the way, we might not actually even see this thing, but it worked out well. So this was from the chocolate experience. This was from Vista Los Sueños, which was a park right outside of where we were staying. And there were lots of cool things here, but we really liked this chocolate experience, which was basically they took you through and taught you all about the plants and the process of making chocolate, and then you made your own chocolate drink and little chocolates. So you agree with me, right? That this was way cooler than we expected it to be?
Oh, much cooler than I was expecting. You hear a tour of chocolate, whatever. You're expecting a good snack out of it, but that's about it. But no, I would recommend this to anybody. It was fascinating.
Yeah, and that was like a whole 90 minutes or so, the whole thing, right? Yeah, it was pretty comprehensive. I learned more than I ever thought there was to know about chocolate, to be honest, like in all sorts of veins, not just about, how it's processed, but the history and how it is integrated culturally. Like, it's actually a very interesting tour. So also while we were here, we went ziplining.
Yeah,
so
we did.
I dragged Nick up into a 10-line zipline course, and you'd never done anything like that before, right?
No, never. Never.
So A, what made you say yes to doing that? And B, how was that experience for you overall?
What made me say yes? Well, because we were there and I knew I was able to convince myself that so many other people have done it. What could possibly happen to me? So I went ahead and did it. And I hurt myself.
But aside from that one minor snafu where you bonked your head because it not a zipline problem, a user error problem. You didn't lean back far enough and hit the brake.
Well, I didn't follow the instructions correctly.
But outside of that, is that something like that? Would you do that again?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would do it again, but I would look more for ones that have you facing sort of downwards a little bit.
Yeah.
I think, when I went to do the zip lining, I was thinking I would be able to see the ground, but I mean, going through the jungle, even though you're facing up towards the sky, that was still very fascinating, and I'm certainly not upset at all that I did it.
Well, even the one platform, we had all the monkeys playing in the trees all around us. So that was like the first time that we'd actually seen monkeys while we were in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. All right, so back to Neofauna. In addition to going to see the monkeys, we also went on a waterfall tour. Now, this was after our very long day of hiking in Manuel Antonio. We did the park tour, and then we also did a jungle night tour. And we were both like, I'm good at walking all day. And by the end of the day, even I was ridiculously tired and had said to you, well, don't worry. It's a very slow day tomorrow. There's no hiking. We just drive to the monkeys, play with the monkeys, drive to the waterfalls, see the waterfalls, and that's it. So we got on a truck, and as we were getting on, they kept saying to Nick, you can hear my kids in the background.
Yeah,
I told them quiet.
they were saying to me, you know, your shoes are going to get wet, right? And one, I kept wondering why they were specifically targeting me for that. And two, I was thinking, like, I know we're not going to hike because Sarah said we wouldn't. So why are my shoes going to get wet? Does the back of the truck get wet? Does there's some splashing going on? Whatever. I thought, hey, I can handle a little bit of moisture.
Yeah. So then we drove so far through the back roads of the jungle, and the truck stopped, and we got out, and the guide said, okay, let's hike to the first waterfall. And then what? What was your experience for the next 10 minutes, Nick?
Way back when I was a kid, whenever you stepped in a puddle that engulfed your entire shoe, you got what would be called a soaker. So I spent the next, I don't know, how long was it? Hour or so?
Well, I mean, the hike to the first waterfall was only maybe 15 minutes. It might have felt like an hour.
Okay. Well, it was a continuous soaker.
Okay, so I
they were warning me about my shoes getting wet because there's no way you could get there without walking through the actual stream.
Like literally walking through the river. I feel like this is a good time to mention, by the way, that Nick was also wearing sneakers and jeans.
Yes.
So not just your feet are getting wet, like he's now like soaked up almost to the knees.
Yep.
Jeans too. So warning, if you ever plan to travel with me, you might
expect the unexpected.
Expect the unexpected, yes.
Do what she tells you to do, but don't listen to her if she promises you there's going to be no hiking involved.
Truth. Yeah, that seems like a good rule. Speaking of, so
there's a lonely man cradling his water bottle.
So this was on the way up, and I say on the way up because it is quite the hike to El Miro, which is the ruins of what was going to be a mansion that a drug dealer was building, but apparently he got arrested before it was able to be finished. But the whole place there is like taken over by public art. So do you remember how you realized that I wanted to go here?
Oh, yes. Well, what happened was my brother and I arrived in Costa Rica well before you did. And the person we were renting our condo from took us out for a half day. And one of the places he took us to was Elmira. Now, this place is, well, seemingly about 150 miles away, uphill, and not just a gradual incline either. There are some very serious climbs on that path, and so we did that. And in fact, my brother and I missed the turnoff, and we actually wound up climbing probably another half kilometer or so, even further than we were supposed to. But that's the story. But anyway, we did that, and I was amazed, and I thought, this is great. And we're walking down. Walking down is not nearly as easy as it sounds because you're using a whole different set of muscles coming down. But anyway, I was glad I did it, and I was so glad I would never have to do it again until Sarah arrives, and she's laying out her plans for the week that she's there. And we're in the condo, and I hear her tapping away on her computer, lining up places, and she says, "Oh, here's a place we need to go to." And I'm thinking, "Oh God, please not Elmira, please not Elmira, please not Elmira." And she says, "It's a place called Elmira." So I got to do the climb again. Yay!
Now, to be fair, I did tell you didn't have to go, but you're a nice person and didn't want to send me up a mountain by myself. So
I wasn't going to do that. No.
And it was beautiful. It was great. And that's it's a lovely free activity you can do if you're in the area. So that was pretty cool.
And the view from there is
Oh,
incredible too.
phenomenal. There's actually, well, there's two places, right? There's the main ruins, which is up at the top, but then there's also that stopping point, which is where we are here, which
There's that
also
lookout
is
there.
a beautiful lookout. So, but in addition to, the cool art that was up at the ruins, we also saw a couple of the golden orb silkweaver spiders,
Oh yeah, that's
and
right.
we saw a couple of iguanas along the way. So it was like a cool critter spotting time too.
And this is this picture that you're looking at here. This is that's just the pathway
Yeah.
going there. If you look behind me, I know it's hard not to look at me, but if you look behind me, you can see all the artwork that's on the stone wall
Mm-hmm.
that you see going pretty much all the way up there as well.
Yeah, that's just lining the path. And then if you pop onto my Adventure Seeker Sarah Facebook, we did a live video from there as well. So there's like a walkthrough of all the art. It's phenomenal. So you were here to witness the craziest thing I did, which was also the first thing I did in Costa Rica, which was the paragliding.
Paragliding. Yeah.
So you watched that happen.
Yes.
Now that you've seen me do it, do you think that is something that you would try if you were given the opportunity in the future?
Yeah, I probably would. There's parts of me, really big parts of me, that say don't do it, don't do it. But once again, it's something that, like, we saw when we were going there. We saw all these people in the air and everything, and so it must have been an incredible ride for you. And so many people do it. Once again, it's one of those things I'd be able to talk myself into doing just by being able to say, like, it's been done so many times before. It must be incredibly safe, but just an absolutely phenomenal ride.
But I bet you wouldn't have said that 2 months ago.
No, not a chance.
So we're going to look at one more photo here. This is just a cute little froggy, but as you can see, it's nighttime. So when we were driving on that first day that we went to the national park, we saw signs on the way back for jungle night walks. And I said, oh my God, that's a terrible idea. Why would anyone ever do that? There are so many poisonous things in Costa Rica, so many things that can kill you. Why would you go into the jungle at night when they're all awake? And then 2 days later,
He said, we must do that.
So what did you think about that? I mean, obviously it was in some ways, one of the more dangerous things that we did.
Well, I suppose theoretically, but we didn't really run into or hear anything that was at all dangerous there. But I actually had a much better time doing that than I thought I was going to.
Do you think that was maybe because it was cooler at night?
Well, that was definitely a plus for sure.
Yeah, especially after several hours of hiking during the daytime in like the hottest, most humid part of Costa Rica. So, all right. So I'm gonna get rid of our slideshow here. And is there any? So I'm sure you'll go back to Costa Rica. Is there anything that you saw while you were there that you didn't get a chance to do that you feel like you would like to do next time?
There is. Oh, the last week that I was there, I spent on an island in the town of Tortuguera. And it is the only place in Costa Rica where the sea turtles nest. And I desperately want to go back. Well, I just really want to go back, period. But I really want to be there to see the hatching.
Yeah, no, that's
of the sea turtles.
That's a great one.
Absolutely. Pictures. I got to know a woman there who owns a hotel right by the beach. They actually have during the hatching season, these turtles don't know where they're going. You might think they would instinctively be running towards the ocean, but they don't. They just run everywhere, and so they actually have to be. And this hotel that's there is open, just like most other buildings there, is open to the elements, and so these turtles have free reign of the hotel, and so staff are constantly picking them up by the bucket loads and taking them out to the ocean. I want to be there for that.
Can you just imagine that for like a month of or a couple weeks of your hotel life, your job is turtle scooper?
Turtle Cooper.
Right.
Yep. Put that on the resume.
So, in all of your time traveling around Canada, is there anything, or anywhere else, it doesn't have to be Canada, is there any particular adventure that you would just absolutely recommend to people?
To be honest, I'm not that much of a traveler, you know. I can really, I can really only recommend. Well, I'm sure if I sat and thought about it, I could think of some other things. But Costa Rica's really been on my mind a lot since I got back just a little less than a month ago. I want to go back there very, very much so, and everybody else, I'm telling you, you've got to set aside a week or so and go.
I've already sent several people to Costa Rica for their vacations, and it was pretty recently when I was there. So I don't disagree with you. I think if it weren't for the fact that, you know, we have other commitments here, I would have came home and packed our stuff and moved to Costa Rica the day after I left. So
yeah,
yes, Costa Rica is definitely high on my recommendation list too. So you're not necessarily, you know, a lifelong adventure seeker, someone who's been out traveling and seeking adventure forever. But I would say that you are.
Very safe to say that I've lived a life exactly the opposite of that. Yes.
But I would say that you are now a recently initiated adventure seeker.
I'm looking forward to having another week like that. You bet.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to people who were like you, that didn't really make an effort to go out and seek out adventure? Do you have any advice now that you've done some of those things?
Yeah. Get up. Get up, move around, look for things to do, step out of your comfort zone a little bit. You know, doesn't have to be a lot, but do
maybe
that.
Maybe don't go hiking through a river, but
yeah, you don't have to hike through a river. Take Sarah with you, but don't listen to everything she says.
Almost everything.
Almost everything.
Yeah. But maybe
I promise you there's not going to be a hike. There's going to be a hike.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good advice overall. If Sarah says there's not going to be any walking, just assume there might be some walking.
There's going to be.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. It was great to have you. Great to chat about Costa Rica and think about being back there again. Mm-hmm. And we will see you again soon. Okay. Maybe talk about ghost adventures at some point.
That'll be the next one.
Have a good night.
You too.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you, Nick, for joining. So we're back again next week for every Friday at 6. Next week, we should have Sam to talk about all of their travels and their adventure blogs. So watch for that. And also make sure to go follow all the places that you can see what I'm doing. So we talked about Class A Paranormal. You can find them on Instagram, on Facebook. Make sure to follow A Canada Travel, where I'm an adventure seeker and write about my adventures and post about my adventures. Nova Scotia Buzz, if you're from Nova Scotia or just like to hear about what's happening in Nova Scotia, that's a great thing to go follow on Facebook, and also a great website where you can pull all of the news from Nova Scotia. You can find me, Adventure Seeker Sarah, on virtually every platform. So I'm on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. So go follow all of those. Make sure to go find thatbeerthing.ca, the beer blog that I'm writing for with Josh from Hey Josh, What You Drinking? And of course, Connect TV you can find on Facebook, YouTube. So go subscribe. Thank you for joining us this week. Happy adventuring!